Hello, all my Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and Harry Potter fans. It is I, your host, Rehash, and welcome back to the Gentleman's Chat. Today we're going to be continuing our coverage of the Beast Tamer who was kicked out of the S-Rank party. Where we last left off Lox, he was in the middle of requiring harem girl number 1, an elf girl. Of course, none of us are actually here for the cute girls. We're here for the cute pets! Of course, since it's a harem manga, it's kind of the same thing. Anyway, let's continue our coverage. The chapter begins with a flashback to Shannon's past. Apparently, she used to have a family of elves in an elven village, and a little brother. They lived in harmony and in peace. But one day, her brother mysteriously goes missing in a forbidden forest. Her parents go out and look for him, while leaving Shannon behind to look after the kids. But she couldn't just stand idly by while her brother might be in danger. So she goes off in search for her brother herself, doing anything she can to try to hunt him down, until she comes across the Sorcerer's Mansion. Woo! Apparently, this Sorcerer's Mansion was found deep in the forest earlier, and it's a mansion that no one is allowed to enter. So Shannon figures, why the hell not? My brother might be in there. So she goes in, a place where no one has lived for quite some time. And she searches for her brother, screaming his name, until she actually manages to find the little bastard. She goes over to him and realizes he's alive but weak. But to her horror, she sees... Wait a minute. What the hell? Who let the dwarf out of his flask? It was me. Well, for lack of better name, I'm just calling this thing the dwarf in the flask. Well, the moment Shannon sees the dwarf in the flask, she immediately tries to run with her brother, but it shuts the doors and she can't get out. Then it simply asks, which one does it want to save? She begs the creature to save her little brother, which he gleefully accepts and penetrates her body. I'm sure there's another way I'm going to put that, but I'm not. The next day, she wakes up in her bed as if nothing happened. Her brother is back, and she thinks it was all a dream. Until strange phenomena started following her around. Death. It started with the bugs. Then it moved on to the frogs. Then the rats. Soon large animals like giant horses were beginning to die. And it was all surrounding Shannon. Shannon tried to tell her parents, but they said it was her imagination. But she knew something was wrong. So, in order to protect her homeland, she left. Not knowing what to do, she ended up becoming a valuable trade in the slave market, and getting sold to several people. But no matter where she went and no matter how good she was, all of her masters would end up dying, in gruesome and horrific ways. Some simply passed in their sleep, others fell to beasts, others just simply fell. And soon she was given the name the Goddess of Death. She was eventually picked up by the guild, but not wanting anyone to die anymore, she gave off a very hostile personality. And if they continued to try to pursue her, she would threaten them with force. It didn't matter who, it didn't matter what, they just needed to stay away from her. Otherwise, death would appear again. That is, until we finally catch up to present day where she met Lox. She tried to do her usual routine, but Lox is too much of a nice guy to allow simply being a bastard to be anyway swaying his opinion of them. And of course, once he summons Big Daddy Fenrir, she drops to her knees in awe, because this is one opponent she can never truly beat. And for the first time in a long while, she decides she wanted to live before passing out. Yeah, nice try, but even with that tragic backstory, you're not topping the crown jewel of the speech I want to live. Play it, Robin!
きたい。私も一緒に海へ連れてって。
Absolutely kills it, subbed or dubbed. Well, with Shannon completely out cold, the bunny girl receptionist takes her away and says that she'll put her to bed until that she can recover. Lox is gently satisfied, but Lucky not so much, thinking that he did something wrong. Lox assures him that he did a great job, which perks up his spirits, and... the bird. Wait, a bird? Wait, is that bird from the last chapter that was just supposed to be a one-off gag? It's not? Oh. And apparently it wants to join him as his new friend. Well, I mean, he was going to get a bird eventually. That's just the nature of the beast. But, really, this does bring up a question. If I'm reading these chapters right, he's had the beast tamer skill for 2 years. 2 years! Are you telling me that in those 2 years he has not tamed one single animal, and yet in the span of a literal day, and I do mean this, a literal day, he managed to tame a Fenrir, an army of ants, and now this bird? Book series, you seem really interesting and I want to follow you, but you're making it so hard to justify the plot. How can you justify him taming so many beasts in such a short amount of time and being this overpowered when he hasn't done a single thing in 2 years? He should have an army by now! Well, it doesn't take long for Shannon to get up and recompose herself. She approaches Lox, but this time with a more solemn and regretful demeanor. She immediately bows her head in apology for the way she acted and behaved. Then, after being told it's no big deal, she gladly accepts him and wishes to be a partner to him moving forward. Locke smiles, and from this day point, they're a party. But then, Lucky decides to throw his paw into the mix and taps her on the head. Locke freaks out a little bit because Lucky's paw has enough force to destroy boulders. But it's fine, he has control over his strength, and also who doesn't want to touch those cute little mittens? But this is when Lucky reveals something about Shannon. She is in fact cursed. A life-stealing curse. Apparently, the ominous curse around her seizes the life force of all those around her in her vicinity, eventually claiming her own life. Lox wonders if there's a way to cure her, which Lucky says there is. He does have knowledge of how to cure her of this ailment. However, it's impossible for him to do so because it doesn't really suit his particular finesse. But he says that Lox does have the ability, and does seem to have the talent. So, Lucky decides to pass on the knowledge to him by doing the ultimate trust exercise. Holy shit! Oh yes, you want unlimited knowledge of the cosmos and its inner workings, then get in my maw. Well, apparently it works, and somehow being ingested in the Fenrir's saliva fluids, I guess, transfers the knowledge of how to remove the curse into Lox's brain. With this, he feels confident that he could remove the curse on Sheenan's body. But before he has the chance to do so, in comes the head adventurer, the leader of the guild, who tells him, no, you're not allowed to do that. This is where we cut to the next chapter. Lox profusely asks why. This curse will eventually kill her, and kill everything around her. If I don't remove it, then it's only going to keep consuming people in death. But the guildmaster says, I agree. The curse will continue. However, a curse of this magnitude can only be cured by a high-level priest, a pope, or someone of the higher church. They don't have the money to do that. However, even if Lox does technically know how to do it, and has the power to do it, if something goes wrong, then that would be him damaging guild property, quote-unquote. You see, slaves aren't people, normally. They're just equipment, items. And obviously, you don't want your property damaged in any type of incident because somebody was being careless. That's a very negative way of looking at it, but we're not exactly dealing with civilized society. So, Lox tries to think of a way around it. But then, they offer a alternative solution. Lox buying Shannon. Why not? We're already dealing with a hero that kills people for fun, childhood friends that have no sense of loyalty whatsoever, and we're dealing with child servants. So, why not have buying slaves? Oh, don't give me that look. They're totally putting those children to work. If not, then why else would they have the ants turn into children? That's still never explained. Well, the Guildmaster explains his reasoning. If Lox really wants to cure her, then he simply needs to buy her. Because if he buys her, then she's no longer his slave, and therefore not his problem. And then he goes on this spiel about how the Adventurer Guild exists to make adventurers happy. And even though that Lox has been suffering with his old partners for so long, he wasn't suffering in silence, that they were always having his back. And he truly hopes that even with the guild's fuck-up on that he could still find a bright future. Shannon had also been suffering in silence for quite a long time, so he feels as though the two would be a good match for each other. Lox agrees with this ideology, and then they ask for Shannon's opinion. Shannon, being the slave girl here, tries to state that she doesn't have an opinion, but if it was with Lox and it doesn't trouble him, she would gladly follow him wherever he goes. Waifu has been acquired. And then there's the subject of how he's going to pay for the slave. Fortunately, the guild receptionist reveals that it turns out the money that he would have gotten from the challenge just happens to be enough to purchase Shannon. Was this planned out from the beginning? Okay, this is starting to seem less and less like just a random series of circumstances that are playing out, and more like the guild is pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Just how thoroughly did they make this plan? Just how long has this plan been in the works? Because this is feeling less and less like the guild is trying to help out, and more like guild manipulation. So now it's time to address the elephant in the room, or rather, the dwarf in the flask. Lox uses his new exorcism powers in order to exorcise the demon. The demon emerges and sees Lox as prime real estate, and tries to possess his body. But Lox is able to fight it off, and disperse the beast. So, no more curse. No more curse means no more dying. As of right now, by the curse. The Guildmaster exclaims that no one knows much about the demons or the curse, but apparently it could have been summoned by the demon who rules over their world. Which is not a very hopeful picture. But Shannon approaches Lox saying how appreciative she is, and that she looks forward to working with him in the future. And so the Guildmaster leaves, and the new party decides to check out their new digs, or rather, their new bracelet. And he's able to take Shannon inside of the bracelet with Lox. Well, she begins talking about how amazing the bracelet world is, as well as taking into account the Skybird, as well as the Fenrir, and calls Lox amazing. We get the usual routine of our boy being a little embarrassed by being complimented by a girl, but then our adorable Lucky reminds us this is a comedy. So they decide they're gonna go eat. So they try to approach the ants, and they made a dungeon. And now our boy has to explain why he has a bunch of children working as servants. Say what you want, dear viewer, but I will keep writing this until I get an acceptable answer. The Skybird didn't change shape. The Fenrir didn't change shape. Why did the ants change into human children? Well, upon Shannon seeing the little ant children, she immediately gets the wrong idea. And, of course, Lox trying to douse the fire, but Lucky isn't helping. And she is getting all the wrong directions. Lox and Lucky get into a little bit of a friendly spat, but then Shannon admits she's jealous because she can't understand Lucky whatsoever. Lox tries to understand where she's coming from. She can understand the ants, but she can't understand Lucky? Why is that? Well, this is when the queen ant explains that she's different from the other orange ants. Because she is the queen, technically, she has an ability that allows her to communicate with all forms of life for diplomatic reasons. And because Shannon is now Papa's partner, she's willing to give this ability, or at least teach Shannon how to use it. So now Shannon has the ability to communicate with all of his animals. And so, it seems as though the little ant girl and Shannon are starting to get along. Locke realizes, oh, right, I haven't given the little ant girl a name. And so he comes up with something on the spot. Patra. And she loves it. Of course, she's so adorably and cute, I think she would have accepted any name from her papa. And she also wants to give names to all of her subordinates/brothers. And they're all looking at him expectantly, thinking that they're going to get super awesome names. But like anyone who's forced to name things at this level on the spot, Lox goofs and just says Orange A, B, C, D, and E. They're all looked at shocked at first, and then celebrate because they got names from their daddy. Even though they aren't really good names. He says he'll name them again later once their personalities start to develop. Okay, I'll admit it, the ant children are starting to grow on me, even though they are abominations of nature. Or maybe it's because they're abominations of nature that I find them so adorable. So after the ant kids show off everything they've done, create storage, tan hides, cook meat, store meat, and even digging for precious stones and materials, Lox congratulates them all for an amazing job, which is probably the best thing he could ever do for them. But he also decides to do the next best thing and feed the little bastards. So, him and Shannon exit the bracelets and go to the shopping district to buy supplies. They have meat, but they need cooking supplies, as well as ingredients. He tries to find cabbages, but unfortunately, they seem to make it a point that they haven't sold cabbages in quite some time. Wonder why that's a detail, but we'll get into that later, as the more impressive detail approaches. As Lox runs into his old party, looking smug as ever. And that is where we're going to end this episode. What a delightfully evil cliffhanger! But now for my thoughts. First off, gonna get this one out of the way. The demon that controls their world. Yeah, I feel like that's going to be a plot point at some point. But I'm just not entirely sure when. But that is too big for them not to use eventually. It's also starting to feel like more and more that while everybody else is playing Go Fish, the guild receptionist and the guild master were playing chess with how well everything's sorted out. There's no way they could have predicted that Lox would have the ability to remove the curse, or the Finja would be able to give him the power, and yet, there it is. Getting strong vibes of Sosuke Aizen planning levels here. Also, our boy has been picking up beasts left and right. Like, it seems as though he can't go even a couple chapters without finding something new. He's got a Finja, he's got ants, he's got the bird, and he hasn't been able to find any beasts in 2 years, but all of a sudden they're just dropping off as if they're going out of style. I mean, to me, no matter how you look at it, he should have been able to get all of these beasts earlier on at a much sooner pace. He should have had an army by now. Why is he only now just unlocking all of these beast summoning abilities? I mean, the whole concept of the plot is that he couldn't find any beast to tame and that it was a useless ability. Yet he keeps getting more and more monsters on his side. And why are the ants human? But if you look past those plot holes, it is still a very enjoyable read. It has sort of an old school Disney movie vibe. As in, The main character is bland as shit, but everybody else around him, especially the beasts, have a lot of personality and have a lot of interesting factoids about them. In other words, the side characters are more interesting than the main character. And of course, the antagonists are just as interesting in the terms of we want to see them squirm. And I'm going to continue to read this story to see their ultimate fate. But until then, I am Rehash, the stirrer of chaos, and this has been a gentleman's chat. See you all next time. But seriously, why are they human?